Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, I'm going to talk about Share, specifically my learnings from my first open source project. So let's dive deep into it. Now let this be very clear. If you want to do any sort of project, personal, professional, secondary, whatever have you, you must have clear aim. Thou shall have clear aim, because it's one of those things that you, as you get older, you understand this. Like, you can't have target as happiness. You do things that make you happy. You can never I want to be happy. That's not how it works. So same goes with projects also. Basically, you have to have clear aim. So if you want to change the world, that should not be your thing. Like, Jeff Bezos did not intend to change the world. He intended to make awesome shopping application. He did. That caused the world to change. SpaceX wanted to make amazing rockets. That caused world to change. So that's how it works. You always have a clear cut aim. And the probability of success can directly, that is very clear, directly ascertained from day one with clarity. Basically, if you are observing your team, and that's very clear, this is who we are, this is what we want to do, the higher the clarity, the more likely they are to be successful, rather than it's like, we are working on things, man, is this, man. No. Low clarity equals 99% chances of failure. High clarity means it's gonna be done. So that's why, like, if you want to have a prediction, that's how it works. The higher the clarity, everything, every last detail. Again, this does not guarantee that it's gonna be successful. It just improves your odd from, let's say, 30% to 90%. That's the whole point. And what things should be clear? Like, right, you are doing something, so what things should be clear? What? Why? How? All of these things would be clear, and these three are the bare minimum. If you have a little bit of time, and which I would urge you, you also have to figure out when, where, what, who, all of those things. For example, I wanted to make a data logger. That required a software side. It required basically software for two fronts. First, the hardware front. Basically, you're gonna have microcontroller sensors. It's gonna send data through USB, and that I wanted an application that sorts all that data into CSV, comma separated value. Benefit of that, once I have that data, I can graph it and make a professional interpretation of things. So what? Why do I need this? Well, yes, the data logger is a real thing in all engineering fields. Everything needs data logger. Do they exist? Absolutely. What about their cost? Lol. That's how much they cost. So for that reason, you have to, I had what, why, how, all of those things were clear. How? Again, use the cheapest microcontroller, in my case, Arduino. Why? Again, it is needed to be done. It has to be done in every application. It's just that super duper expensive. Everything was clear. What exactly? Data logger. So and again, I was very clear. It's like, right now, all I want is the data to be collected and saved in a computer. People are like, what about micro SD card? Again, those will happen later. But this was like, this is what I want. Clear. How, what, why. And again, I'm talking about something very simple. You could have something very complex. It would be like, I'm building an operating system. It could be like I'm building an application that has database management with AI and all that jazz. You still need to know who, how, what, when, where, everything. Higher the clarity, the more likely you are to be successful. And you have to understand the bitter aspect of it, is that what you are willing to put in. Nothing, like, let this be very clear, nothing can be done for free. You always have to pay, either in time, money, or soul, or most likely, if it's anything important, all three. So if you have ever seen very proficient programmers who are like, they come in office in time, they leave office in time, and everybody is happy with them, but they're like, dude, why are you not building the next big thing in your house? They may not be willing to pay the soul part. They have the time, they have the money, but what if they have someone little in their house, a child, and they're like, what, it's far more important for me to spend time with this child in this rare state, rather than be like, do something else. That's a soul price. Like, heck, it happened with Harry Potter's original director, if I'm not mistaken. It's like, dude, it's all good and all, these movies are doing amazing, and first two, I think he did, and it's like, no, I'm out, because I will miss my own children growing up. So that soul price was not acceptable to him. So you always have to understand, there is a price: soul, money, time. When you're young, soul is free, but money and time is the limiting factor. But when you grow up, you could have money, you could have the soul, but you may not have time. So you always have to know what you are willing to chip in and how much, because you may reach a bitter point where it's like, do I keep chipping into it? Again, not everything you will touch or everything you will try to do will be a success. There may be a time, just cut your losses and leave. So you need to know what you are willing to put in before you get into it. You have to be like, hey, let's say I'm spending some money into getting this. That's real. But I'm not spending like so much money that it hurts me. So it's like if it fails, okay. But let's say I got so deep into it, I'm like buying this, I'm doing that, getting PCB made and this and all that, and it's costing too much, I'm losing my sight of this. So you have to be very clear from day one. Higher the clarity, higher the chances of success. Now we come to how do you approach it? Well, first line of defense you have is minimum viable product. Now, what is this minimum viable product? Well, you have to understand this. There are many unknowns in this world. You do not know. Now, here's the deal. What you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. That's the whole biggest bitterness. For example, I wanted to make this fume extractor. This thing I wanted to make. Now, I decided to put a car filter there. Awesome. I wanted to put activated charcoal there. Awesome. I wanted to put fan there. Awesome. But here's the deal. It never occurred to me that charcoal is a very crippling kind of stuff. Like it breaks apart and it starts to like literally starting to create black dust wherever I'm using it, because I did not figure out how to constrain it. I did not knew about this. Like I did not even thought of that. It's like, hey, I'm buying charcoal that is activated. I was just gonna like turn to dust and like flood my working area with black dust. I did not thought of that. I did not know. Another thing is like how loud those fan would be and how annoying it will become to me. So there are many things in whatever project, whatever domain that you are working on. You don't know what you don't know, and you can only know this after you have gone through it. It's one of those things that's like, if we ever wanted to understand why the heck we give respect to experience, that's the reason. They know things that we don't even know, that we do not know. So minimum viable product is the first line that you must do. Is the easiest way to force yourself into limiting the scope. Now, what does scope limiting mean? Meaning, this is one thing that you have to understand. In every field applies, is that getting something done. Like right now, this is Mark 1 for me. That's why it has like cardboard and all that. Could I 3D print it? Absolutely. There are 3D printed parts in this. It's just that I just wanted to get it done quickly. If I started to do a printout, that itself could take like 6 or 7 hours. Yeah, I'm not finishing it. Printout that are like barely 20-30 minutes. Bolt the parts on, put a cardboard there, done, go home. Okay, now it's done. Now I have enough confidence that I can design something far more intricate, far more finished. Now I can finish it. So it's always have to be that way. Like all the projects has to be done this way. Minimum viable product. You design bare minimum part. Like it is the bare minimum. I'm happy with this. For example, in this, my project where I wanted the data coming from this to be saved as a CSV file. So I paid for ChatGPT 4, and this is how my first started to work. Like this is the script: baud rate, comport, start monitoring, stop monitoring, save data, done. So that's how I forced myself. Nothing else. It had no timestamp function, no advanced naming suffix and all that, nothing, just bare minimum. So once I got this, I figured it out. What do I need? What do I don't need? For example, start and stop monitoring that's not necessary. Why? I realized that you can have just one button that switch from start. The moment you click it, it shows stop button. So it's one of those things that's like, once you do it, only then you will know. It's like, hey, I do not need to allocate a space for 2 buttons, only 1 button. Like, oh, I already knew it. Let this be very clear. In your own project, you will have this sort of moment. So this was like, for me, it's like, hey, I do not need start and stop. I just need start, stop, start, stop. So all these things, because I limited the scope, I got this puppy working. It was fully working unit, as in like the script was, you install Python, you run the script, done. It's working right now as it is. And this is also very important for communication, meaning at this stage, I did not have any individual who is willing to come forward and help me in this project. But once I had this and 2 people showed interest, I shared this one to them and they instantly got it. Okay, this is what you want to make. And this also helps you in communication. Like you can talk and design things and all that, or just, this is what I want, better, done. So bells and whistles should not be there in the first one. Like heck, I did not even put a dark mode. It hurt my soul, but I was like, okay, let me get it working first, then I'll put dark mode, then dark mode. So all the bells and whistles has to be done brick by brick, day by day, brick by brick. And be mindful, scope creep is the worst thing that could happen to your project. Especially if you're doing as a side project. If you're not getting paid for it, scope creep will destroy you. I cannot tell you how many people have suggested, hey, like, what if I put a database management in this? I'm like, bro, relax. Let the base thing be done. Once we have that, we can go YOLO, but let that minimum viable product be done. And again, I have lived long enough and I worked in a company that was 20 years old and self-destructed because of this sort of stupidity. So I have very apparent reaction to whenever scope creep happens. So I'm like, no, get this working, get it ready, get it delivered, then go YOLO on it. There are many things I can tell you, like we have a list how many more things we want to add, but this is the stage that I wanted to be ready. It's like done, use this. Then I'm going to figure out other things also. So bells and whistles, one thing at a time, that will allow you to get it done. Like for example, once this was working, only then we switch to, hey, let's have a status window, monitoring console, where we can figure out like, is it working or hanged or something like that. Once we had that, then we had a conversation, hey, can you make it much darker in color so it will become more pleasant to eyes. All those things, you may not think it will take time, but trust me, it does. So be very limiting at your first part, where it's like, just get the damn thing working. Everything else comes later. So this is the minimum viable product. It applies to games, applies to software, applies to AI, applies to everything. Then we come to the team part of it. Here's the deal. It does not matter if you are a single individual doing as a side. Other things will work on you, but this one is compulsory if you have even more than one person. So same page. Now I messed up this part, is that keeping everyone in sync is the step one. You do not start the project until you can guarantee that syncing part. So what does syncing mean? Syncing means whatever tool set that you are using, whatever it may be. It could be a document, Google Drive, or it could be CVS, SVN, GitHub, Git, Perforce, whatever have you. It has to be shared. It has to be practiced, that every individual member of the team should be comfortable with this. Like, I got this. Now, here's many professional people are like, dude, I can do this in my sleep. I get it. But not everybody is a professional on day one. People have to learn this. So if you have someone new, someone inexperienced like me, this has to be sorted before the project gets any further. So this is one of those things that you must make sure that syncing is possible. Like when I worked in game studio, we had like SVN and Perforce. Some games used Perforce, some used SVN. So our leads always made sure that, hey, come in the morning, the first thing you do, you basically download, update, we called it. Update simply means you downloaded everything from repository, so you are sync with what everybody did last day. And we used to commit, quote unquote, basically once after lunch, one after at the end of the day. So that's how everybody remained sync. If that cannot be guaranteed, you're gonna lose time. And failure, the time loss is exponentially critical, because the bigger the chunks of work that you're gonna do, the more necessary it is that it's all in sync. If it's not, you just have to throw that work away. And looping back is the greatest time waster that you can think of. Like the game studio that I'm talking about, the studio that turned to dust, simply, when I was kicked out, they were redoing same thing 3 times. One of my few friends who were still there, they said at the time of closure, they were at 5th iteration of the same thing. They were not doing properly. And again, they turned to dust. I am running my own YouTube channel, so I'm happy. So looping wastes a lot of time. Even in my small project, I messed it up because here's the deal. That start stop button, that was a separate code base. That was not synced with all other individuals, and we moved forward. Everything was fine. It was like, wait a minute. The text is not updating. Somewhere along the line, we lost it because it was not synced properly. So it's one of those things that if you do not spend, like you're like, hey, I do not want to spend, I just want to get into work now. Just don't. Figure these things out first, then jump into programming, then jump into developing your system, hardware, software, whatever have you. And be kind to your future self. This is one of those things that thankfully the job environment does teaches you. It's like all the meetings are useless if you do not know what you're doing. So how do you know what you're doing? Well, you comment for your future self. For example, any application, whichever application you choose, it always gives you the option when you're committing, write a goddamn comment there. Trust me. And the comment is not for your manager or like all that jazz. You may think that in the first phase, but as you get older, you're like, dude, that's for me, because you're gonna mess up. I guarantee you. No matter who you are, no matter what you are, you're gonna mess up. And then you're gonna look back. It's like, and if you, which every young starter does that, it's like no comments, and then like, I do not know where I messed it up. And if you have good commenting habits where are very clear, very succinct, it's like, oh, this is not working. And you can go back 2 or 3 steps and figure out what was the last time it was working. With commenting, you can say, oh, this is what I changed. Okay, now you know exactly where something went wrong. So whenever you are doing that, is basically you are being kind to your future self. Basically, this is Wednesday. You want to be pleasant and kind to your version of Friday. So you do not have a very bitter weekend. So be mindful of your future self. So leave notes, leave crumbs. Like why do you think people type comments in the code? It's not for someone else, it's for them itself. It's like, oh, this is what I changed. You can write a comment. It's like, go thorough in there. It's basically helping your future self. Now we come to the painful part that everybody wants to avoid. It's basically testing. Now, testing is one of those things. Okay, this part also I messed up. Thorough and vigilance. You need to be very thorough and very vigilant. If you are not, you're gonna mess up. Like again, that's the same thing. That start and stop button. I was not testing every single clickable function every time. So when we messed it up, we went 1 or 2 days into the project without even realizing that thing was broken. If we had fixed it, all other things would not have required so much hassle. So it's one of those things. And this is one thing that you learn the hard way, is that just because it worked in the past does not mean it's going to keep working. You work on something, something else breaks. In Hindi, we have a line saying, code phat gaya, like code exploded. So it's one of those things that you learn. It's like, hey, it was working yesterday. That does not fly in real world. It happens. That's why you have to be very thorough and very vigilant. And here's the one harsh reality of real things, is that makers are not good tester. If you are the one making it, you are the worst person to test it. Why? We're like, hey, I'm thorough and all that. Yeah, it's not going to work. Why? Because your subconscious knows what not to do. For example, if you're writing a code and you know, and you in your early testing, you figured it out as like, if I click this with this enabled or clicked this with while I'm pressing Alt, it crashes there. You won't even know that your brain is never allowing you to do that. Your subconscious would like, don't do this. And that's why we always have two isolation groups. One group is for building, one is for testing. And you may be like, testing is wasting money. No, they are making sure that you get paid next month. So that's why makers do not make good, testers. Whatever for, even for hardware, because you are building it, and I'm removing the emotional investment component. I'm just talking about like your subconscious knows way too much about it compared to any other individual. So you won't even know. It's like, oh, this is an issue or this is a hassle. Like you can see that in basically all the Linux communities. Like because they are programmer, they think as programmer and they design everything as programmer only to be used by programmers. And then they wonder, oh, why the heck people pay for Apple? It's like, yeah, Apple is designed by programmer for humans, not programmers to programmers. So your subconscious is the limiting factor and you have to agree to it. You have to be okay with it. It's like, hey, I made it. Someone else, please blow it up. You figure it out and trust me, you will be grateful for your younger self who allowed this sort of painful experience to happen. And GUI and testing is one of those things that has to be done by third party. GUI is one of those things that because you are programming, like here's the deal, watch any tutorial on it, doing anything complex in Windows versus anything in any Linux distribution. How quickly every Linux distribution goes to, you click here, you start here and then just type it. Like think about it. Like think, we do not like programmer will not think because that's their native language. They're like, dude, I alt tab it and I just type the code. It's like that's their native language. Common public, no, I will pay someone else just so I have a better experience, and that's why that's how the money flows. So you have to be very mindful. Testing and GUI specifically has to be done someone either an artist or has to be done someone who's like third party to you. They can tell you it's like, bro, this is hard to understand. So, and this is another reason why majority of open source projects fail. It's like so hard to use. Not all of them, let that be very clear, not all of them. But if you ever wondered like why not everybody is using FFmpeg, that's the reason for it. Or why not everybody is using one Linux distribution, that's the reason for it. Search any tutorial on that and always will come down to type this code. Which again, other people will warn you. If you do not know what you're typing, you could brick your system. It's like, how the heck I'm supposed to do this? So that's why testing has to be always one of those memes. It's like, what if you have a locker and that locker just slides out? It's one of those things. Trust me. Testing. Be vigilant, be very thorough, and try your best to find a third party to do your testing, especially with GUI and like the overall use and feel of it. It's inherent nature of human mind. Your subconscious will not allow you to mess up if you are the one building it up. So trust me. Then we come to the final reality. Bitch slap. Now this bitch slap is, as Thanos put it, reality is often disappointing. You have to just accept it. It is what it is. You have to accept it. You have to be like, okay, that's what happens. So there are limits to everything. Tools, free labor, especially if you are working on free and open source system. I'm extremely grateful that to people who actually chipped in their time and effort. They actually took some serious initiative and actually grinded and actually got the project working. That I'm eternally grateful. But here's the deal, I could not ask them to like, hey, can you do this also? It's like, if they want to, awesome. If they end up in a like, hey, I have an exam tomorrow, it's like, I'm not working on this anymore. It's like, you have to accept it. So there are limits of that. There are limits of free labor from other people, and not to mention integration. It's one of those things. For example, the real world bitch slap for me was when I was building this. I had the idea that we're gonna have 3 refresh rate, because yes, really, if you are doing something long-term testing, you only need 1 hertz. If you're doing something that's like, I want to see something transient kind of thing, not very sharp transients, but like, I want to see 10 hertz. But what if you want to see really sharp things, 100 hertz? Now I wanted to limit in these 3 distinct layers, so I can be damn sure that nobody's like, hey, let's make it an oscilloscope. It's like, yeah, that's not viable. So turns out even 100 hertz was expecting too much. How would I know that? After building it. That's why I say you don't know what you don't know. I thought it's like, hey, I'm just going to do this. Then turns out the microcontrollers that are on the sensor board, most of the time, they're not designed to be refreshing hundreds of times. Most of them have very low refresh rate. So even if your I2C bus can read the data, there is no new data to be read. It's like there is no point of doing 100 hertz. You can repeat the same data. So after doing it, I learned it. That was the Reality Bits Lab. Another was like microcontroller. It's a cheap microcontroller. It does not have the horsepower of like FPGA units or a full-fledged processor. It cannot collect enough sensors, because here I'm starting with 4, but my dream was like, as many as possible, 20, 30, 40, something like that. That's the whole point of data logger. Data logger is just not one thing, it's multiple things. Like temperature, voltage, current, all that sense data going there. It's like, dude, microcontroller is like, bro, I can send the data. 1 hertz, I'm your man. 10 hertz, I got this. 100 hertz, no. So like, the baud rate I calculator was turning out like 500,000 baud rate was needed to convey that sort of information with some buffer. Yeah, not happening. So it's one of those things that most sensors don't have that sort of, or most MC microcontroller units can't do that. And not to mention, because I write everything in Python. Python was this thing that we selected. It does not have the depth to get that shit done. It needed to be done in C++ or something like that. So that was the Reality Bits Lab for us. Every project goes through this. It's like, we're gonna do this, man. This is gonna be awesome, man. It's like Bits Lab is waiting at the other end. Trust me, everyone has to go there, and you have to be okay with that. And if you had like proper minimum viable product, you'll have something useful. Like we all think like programming me and coding me and it's like, nah, bro, this is the boring part of it. So trust me, it's if you have this sort of principle in mind, there's a very good chance you can not only start a project but finish it and have something useful at the other end. So this was my presentation on basically what did I learn from my first open source project. Hopefully this has helped you in some way, help you understand some things. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment, because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.